everybody, welcome back to the Coos Art Museum's online art classes where we bring the art into your home. Today I'm going to show you a really easy watercolor bookmark that you can make for yourself or give it as a gift to someone. The supplies that you're going to need to make this watercolor bookmark is a piece of watercolor paper. I have a 2" by 9" bookmark, but again, you could make your bookmark any size you want. The next supply you will need, of course, is your watercolor paints. The colors I've chosen for this one are a blue, a green, and a Payne's gray. But at the end, I will show you some examples of how I change these colors up. The rest of the supplies you'll need are paint water, paint brushes, paint towel or paper towel, some painter's tape, I'm using the blue kind, and then a white gel pen. For step number 1, I'm going to tape down the 4 sides of my bookmark. This is going to do 2 things. One, when you add water to watercolor paper, it can expand the fibers and create it to warp or buckle, which can be challenging to paint. Taping down the sides can help keep everything relatively flat. The second thing it does is it makes a really nice crisp border, which is something that I want for my piece. The only thing you want to watch for is while you're putting the tape down that you're making it as even as possible so that your tape isn't crooked, because if your tape is crooked, then your white border is going to be a little bit crooked. I'm taping the piece down directly to my art desk, but you could tape it down to an artboard if you'd prefer. Now that we have the paper taped down, it's time to get painting. And the first thing I'm going to do is wet my entire piece of paper. This is going to wake the fibers up and it's going to help me to create a really nice gradient effect. So with clean water and a larger paintbrush, I'm covering the whole piece with water. Here are a couple things to pay attention to when using water. Depending on how much water you have on your paper will cause your paints to do different things. If you have a lot of water, you're going to see a really shiny reflection on the paper, and this is going to cause my paints to travel really fast. Whereas if my paper is a little bit foggy, where it's wet, the paints are going to travel slower. The best way to learn how much water you need is just to play around with it. Now let's move on to adding actual paint. I'm going to have a gradient that goes from blue into green and then into black. I'm going to start with my phthalo blue at the very top and then slowly bring that down into green. When I first start off, I don't use just straight paint. I take a little bit of water and mix it with the paint to get a solution. The more water you have in your paint, the lighter the color. So I'm going to start off lighter and then slowly work darker. I'll use the same effect with my emerald greens. When the 2 colors meet, they should blend together, creating a really nice gradient effect from blue into green. I want to darken in my colors, so I'm going to jump into my Payne's gray. You can use black for this, but I find black is really harsh and sometimes it kills your color. So for this, I find Payne's gray works the best for me. I'm going to mix that with a little bit of my blue to darken those hues, and the same thing with my greens. So the effect that I'm wanting to work for is a night sky that I can then paint some silhouette trees in the front. From this point, it's just playing around with your color. If you find your color is getting too dark, you can take a paper towel and dab up some of that excess paint and lighten things up. It can be easy if this is your first time painting to mix too much color and you find that everything is the same color and you've lost your gradient. If that happens, don't worry, just take the paper towel, dab off some of the excess paint and start again. If you're using a good quality watercolor paper, it should be able to take a lot of work and use. So again, playing around with things to find out how much you can work your paper before it starts damaging it is important. That's why I enjoy creating these bookmarks, because they're a small project that I can practice a technique with and really learn a lot from. But when they turn out, they look really cool. At certain points, you may need to let your piece dry before moving on to adding more color or another layer. And there's two ways that you can do this. There's a slow way, which is the best way, which is just to let it dry on its own. But if you're like me and impatient, you can use a little hairdryer. The negative side with using a hairdryer is it tends to push the paint around, and you can lose some of the textures and gradients that you work so hard to get. So if you have the time to let it dry on its own, that's the best option. So now you have your background painted and it's completely dry. Now let's work on painting our silhouettes of our trees. And for this, we're going to channel our inner Bob Ross. I'm using a tiny liner brush. I think it's a number 1 round. And I'm starting at the top of the tree and beginning to paint in the branches. Think of the tree as an overall sloping triangle shape. You're not trying to fill the whole thing in, and you're not trying to make it look uniformed. Some branches are bigger and fuller than others. There's gaps that are missing, but overall it's a triangle. It may take you a couple of trees before you finally get the groove of it, but don't give up. These trees are super fun to create. Step is optional, but I'm going to use a white gel pen to add in some stars into my night sky. So again, make sure your paper is completely dry before you do this, but I'm just going to tap in some stars. A tip with that is, again, don't make them uniformed. Put some stars closer together, some farther apart, make little clusters, and just have fun with it. Now that our bookmark is done, I want to remove the tape around the edges. I find sometimes this blue tape likes to hold on a little bit stronger than I want it to. So a tip with this is, if your painting is dry, you can take a blow dryer and heat up the adhesive around the tape, and it peels off much, much easier. Peeling off the tape and revealing the white pure border is so satisfying. But there you go, our finished bookmark. If you want, you can hole punch the top and add a ribbon, or if you have good penmanship, which I do not, you can calligraphy some fancy writing or words on the top of the bookmark or on the back. So let me go ahead and show you a couple of examples of bookmarks that I did using the same technique, only just different colors. We hope you enjoyed this video from the Coos Art Museum. If you'd like to see more, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, we'd love to see you in person. If you're interested in in-house and online classes that we offer at the Coos Art Museum, you can check out our website at coosart.org. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep being creative.